Hello, welcome to the Parsha Themes Shir Parsha Balak, which is dedicated for the Refuah Shalema of Moshe Shimon ben Leah Esther Chaya Halevi. So at the beginning of Parsha Balak, we talk about Bilaam and Balak. The sages depict Bilaam, the Gentile prophet whom Balak summoned to place a curse on Bnei Israel, as having been both exceptionally gifted and exceptionally evil. Commenting on the pasuk, "And never did a prophet arise in Israel like Moshe," which is in the book of Devarim, the sages write that although no prophet equal to Moshe arose for Bnei Israel, such a prophet did arise among the Gentile nations, namely Bilaam. His level of prophecy matched that of Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest of all prophets. On the other hand, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin lists Bilaam among those who have no share in the next world due to their sinfulness. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says Bilaam's evil character is alluded to by his very name, Bilaam, without a people. Bilaam was a loner. He was on his own. He had no principles, no commitments, no loyalties, no rootedness in humanity. Balak sent for Bilaam, saying, "Now come and curse these people, because they are too powerful for me. For I know that those who you bless are blessed, and those you curse are cursed." Bilaam was a sorcerer, or a prophet for hire, who had supernatural powers. His curses were far more effective than his blessings. He could curse, and that person would be blighted by misfortune. He used his sorcery skills with devastating effect. But Bilaam was no prophet in the moral sense. He wasn't concerned with justice or the rights and wrongs of those whose lives he affected. Like a contract killer of a later age, his services could be bought. We might say that Bilaam was the first manipulative influencer, the term we use today in reference to a public personality who embraces and promotes whatever cause will earn him the most fame and the most money. Bilaam was not committed to any principles or values. He went along with whatever cause paid him the most, and with his outstanding skills he succeeded in defeating whichever party he was solicited to defeat and bolstering whichever party he was solicited to bolster. The antithesis to Bilaam was Moshe Rabbeinu, of whom HaShem said, "In all my house he is the most trustworthy." Moshe was a man of principle, not of vanity. He could not be bought. He repeatedly showed the willingness to sacrifice himself for the sake of Bnei Israel. He did not do what was popular, convenient, or profitable. He did what was right. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu, our leader and role model, his unrelenting commitment to his principles and to the people, without ever compromising his ideals for the sake of convenience, wealth, or prestige. Bilaam was the only genuine non-Jewish prophet, not Muhammad, not Yeshu of Nazareth. The Gentiles had claimed, if we had a prophet like Moshe, then our people would also have turned out to be righteous. Thus, HaShem orchestrated the existence of this single Gentile prophet to disprove their claim, and also to demonstrate that no other nation than the Jews were capable of raising a righteous prophet from their midst. After the episode described in the Parsha, Bilaam returned to his homeland and to his regular job as sorcerer, before being killed by sword at the hands of the Jews, as divine revenge for his plot to destroy the Jewish nation with immorality, which we will touch upon later. Balak himself was also a sorcerer, but he had had previous dealings with Bilaam, and knew that the power of his mouth to successfully curse his enemies was much greater than his own. Bilaam was manipulative, greedy, and angry, and practically demanded that HaShem go along with his evil designs. We see the difference between a true believer like Moshe and a self-serving fraud like Bilaam. The former strives for a real relationship with his Creator and to carry out his will while subsuming his own physical and material drives, whereas the latter, like Bilaam, schemes and strategizes to attain their own selfish goals, no matter the cost. Whereas Moshe was a byword of fidelity, loyalty, integrity, and trustworthiness, Bilaam had none of these qualities. his tactic was solely based on what would bring him the most money, fame, honor, and glory. Now, the selective vision of antisemites, which is very well seen in the current events of today. Balak, the son of Tzipor, saw all that Israel did to the Amorites, says the verse. The Torah speaks of Balak, seeing only what Bnei Israel did to the kingdoms of Sichon and Og, but not what happened beforehand, the background to this story. Bnei Israel did not decide out of the blue to wage war against these kingdoms. They sent a benign message to Sichon, respectively requesting rights of passage through his kingdom's territory, and Sichon responded by not just refusing, but by mobilizing an army and launching an entirely unprovoked war against Bnei Israel. And then, after Sichon's army was defeated, Og, for no reason at all, launched an attack on Bnei Israel also, and they successfully captured his territory as well. This selective vision is characteristic not only of Balak, but of Jew haters ever since, including in modern times. Every time Israel is forced to defend itself against its ruthless enemies, people around the world see Israel's military operations, but not the actions of the terrorists that made them necessary. They report on Israel's actions as though the IDF just randomly decided to attack, ignoring the relentless, vicious attempts made by Israel's enemies to annihilate the Jewish state. Israel's current war in Gaza is portrayed not as an unfortunate, necessary campaign to dismantle Hamas and thus prevent another October 7th, but rather as unprovoked, baseless assault on innocents. Because Israel's critics selectively see not what Israel's enemies do, but only what Israel is forced against her will to do in response to what they do. The people who propagate these distortions are considered to be the students of Balak, who likewise insisted on viewing Bnei Israel as the evil aggressors, while in truth their actions are the necessary result of the aggression of their foes. Our evil enemies, with their propaganda, are still using these despicable ancient antics to libel and slander us, but they will not be spared divine punishment for their troubles. As for us, we need to wake up as a united and unified nation who have been divinely gifted the entire land of Israel and speak with one loud and clear voice to defeat them. Now, the ancestry of Bilaam and Balak. Both Bilaam and Balak owed their very existence to the forefathers of the Jewish people. Bilaam descended from Lavan, who had children only due to the merit of Yaakov Avinu, who arrived at his home. Balak was a Moabite, descending from the daughters of Lot, whose very life was saved by Avram Avinu. However, their lineage didn't change their anti-Jewish agenda and genocidal desires. Previously, Bilaam had been one of Pharaoh's advisors, together with Job and Yisro, and had supported his policy for all Jewish babies to be drowned in the Nile. Now, Bilaam's adventure. So Balak sends Malachim messengers to recruit Bilaam to go and curse the Jewish people. God comes to Bilaam at night, when he generally received his prophecies, and asked him who his guests were. Bilaam deduces from this that at times even HaShem, God himself, isn't aware of the whole truth about a situation. Of course, he was very much mistaken. Nothing is hidden from the Almighty Creator. HaShem was Bilaam's enemy. In his mind, he would try to trick God into cursing the Jewish nation, which of course we know now was ridiculous. But he was such a master of scheming and manipulation that he hoped he could even get HaShem to change his mind, so to speak. HaShem tells Bilaam that he can't go with them, that he can't curse them, because they are blessed. But Bilaam hears only what he wants to hear. Bilaam tells the messengers, Ma'ein Hashem l'siti lahaloch imachem. Hashem has refused to allow me to go with you, implying with you, but perhaps with a more honorable entourage, I could go. Balak then continued to send more and more honorable officers, practically begging Bilaam to go with them to curse the Jewish people. Next, Bilaam says, Im yitan li Balak mulo beiso kesef v'zahav lo uchal la'avor es pi Hashem. Even if Balak would give me his his house full of silver and gold, I cannot transgress the word of HaShem. Bilam clearly coveted Balak's great wealth, as well as great honor for himself. And his reasoning was that if Balak was to do this any other way, he would have to employ a whole army, organize and employ a whole army in order to defeat the Jewish nation. So the way that Balak was trying to do it with Bilam was saving him a lot of money. HaShem says, however, if you insist, I won't stop you, but you will end up regretting it. The lesson for us is that sometimes when the clear divine message is a no, we should accept it. Bilam rose early because he was passionately driven by his hate of the Jewish people. He was so eager to curse the Jews that he saddled his own donkey, despite it belittling his dignity. Now Bilam's miraculous donkey, we may have heard the story. HaShem sent an angel to stand in the path of Bilam's donkey. V'yisyatzev Malach HaShem, an angel of HaShem stood. The name of HaShem here used delineates his characteristic of mercy. HaShem was being merciful by sending the angel to try to prevent Bilam from continuing his journey and thus sinning, and thereby to prevent his impending destruction. HaShem acts in the same way with us. Even though a certain course of action seems correct, if an unexpected obstacle impedes our progress, we should consider maybe a message that it's better for us in the long run to change course, a message from Shemayim, from God. We should always try to understand God's messages, because often He is guiding us to adopt a certain course of action to prevent a disaster. By sending the angel, this is what HaShem was doing with Bilam, but Bilam ignored the message. The donkey veered off course 3 times to avoid the angel, but Bilam, despite claiming spiritual awareness, was unable to see what even his lowly animal saw. He thus struck his donkey all 3 times. We can learn that sometimes even the lowliest can see the truth and the correct and moral course of action, while a chacham, a highly intelligent person, even one who claims spiritual awareness, is blind to it. Now HaShem made a great miracle and opened the donkey's mouth to speak to Bilam and reprimand him. He was getting musar, ethical lessons, from his donkey, the most unlikely of places. But for a Baal Gaiva, an arrogant person like him, it needed something very unusual to shake him up. The shock of hearing his donkey speak ought to have caused Bilam to reconsider, realizing that he was but a tool in God's hands, and that his own words too were completely under God's control. The talking donkey was an act of mercy, a chance for the wayward prophet to awaken, humble himself, and abandon his wicked mission before it was too late. God was also demonstrating that the fact we humans are able to speak at all is as much a miracle as HaShem opening the donkey's mouth to speak. As we say just before the Amidah, HaShem Svasai Tivtoch, please God open my lips so my mouth can declare your praise. Now HaShem uses Bilam against himself. So God wanted the blessings to come about through the evil Bilam, so that the whole world would know that it is impossible for anyone to harm Israel against his will. The Midianites had reported to Balak that Moshe's saving power and that of the Jewish nation itself was in their mouths, by way of their prayers and praises to God. So he in turn sent for Bilam to curse the Jews with his mouth. Thus, Bilam wasn't summoned for his powers of prophecy at all, but rather for his power to curse. Kavali, curse for me. Im likro lecha, kum lechitam v'ach es hadava. If the men came for you, you may arise and go with them, but only the thing I shall speak to you, that shall you do, says God. Why did God agree for Bilam to go at all? This is a machlokas, it's a difference of opinion between the sages. Rashi says the word lecha implies that if you feel it is for your benefit, you may go, but still you will say what I want you to. He had permission to go, but not to say what he pleased. According to Ibn Ezra, it agrees with the sage's principle in the Gemara Makos that HaShem allows a person to go in the way his desire leads him. The Midrash HaGodol says that before God destroys Israel's foes, he elevates them to a high position, so their fall will be greater and more famous, or infamous in fact, in history. Thus God made him think that he was permitted to go. So Bilam saddled his own donkey. Hate drove him to extremes of behavior which he would normally have regarded as beneath him. V'charba shlufa biyodo, and the angel's sword was drawn in his hand. According to the patriarch Yaakov's blessing, the usual weapons of war are a voice for Yaakov and a sword for Esav. The message here was that Bilam, by attempting to curse the Jewish nation with the voice, who is itself defined by its voice calling out to HaShem, was risking a role reversal whereby, in turn, he, together with other Gentiles, would themselves be destroyed by the sword. The general message was that his sorcery couldn't prevail against HaShem. Just as his donkey had been allowed to speak only for the glory of Israel, so he had only been granted prophecy in order for him to bless Israel. When his donkey spoke and contradicted Bilam, it was to show the elders of Moab that he was merely a puppet in Hashem's hands. Bilam admits, Hadavar asher yosim elokim b'fi, the words that God puts in my mouth is what I will be able to say and nothing but. Bilam attempts to bribe God by offering sacrifices. It doesn't work. Nothing done by the Gentile nations can match the Jews' dedication to God's Torah and mitzvahs. Also, spiritually, it isn't possible to get results by attempting to shortcut the system using magic incantations and the like, which we call segulas. V'yikar Elokim el Bilam, and God chanced upon Bilam. Now, the word v'yikar comes from kari, which is impurity or seminal emission. The implication is that Hashem's revelation was reluctant, and that Bilam wasn't really fit to receive it at all. This is in total contrast to how he appears to the Jewish prophets, in other words, with design and purpose, even to those not on a par with Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, the power of speech. Bilam's curses turn into blessings. The first blessing, Mehararei Kedem, from the mountains of the east. This alluded to the great merit of the Avos, the patriarchs, which protects the thus invincible nation of Israel. V'goyim lo yischashov, and it will not be reckoned amongst the nations. When the final reckoning for the nations arrives on the great day of judgment, and it will come soon, Israel won't be included in their punishment. Or alternatively, it indicates that the Jews will never assimilate into their host nations, as was Bilam's plan. Now, Bilam continues to talk, Tammuz nafshi, I desire to experience a death like theirs. Even the evil Bilam desired the death that the righteous Jews experienced, and the same portion in Olam Haba, the next world. But due to his arrogance and evil deeds, he ended up getting neither. He was later killed by the sword of the Jewish people. Now the second curse, which turned into a blessing, Ki lo nachash b'Yaakov, there is no divination in Yaakov. This indicated the total failure of Balak and Bilam's mission, as their entire enterprise was an attempt to curse the Jews by divination and sorcery. Vayikach Rosh HaPa'or, and Balak took him to the summit of the height. Through his sorcery, Balak foresaw that Israel would suffer a tragedy which would emanate from the height called Pa'or. He hoped the tragedy would be as a result of Bilam's curse, though as a sorcerer the full details were hidden from him. Now the third curse, which turned into a blessing. Shochen l'shvatov, dwelling according to its tribes. The Israelite camp was holy in its formation. The entrances to the tents weren't opposite each other. This trait of preservation of privacy and modesty is a defining feature of Israel and engenders holiness. Kalavi Yakum, like a lion cub, who can stand him up? And that, by the way, is the name of the mission coined by Bibi Benjamin Netanyahu for the recent excursion of Israel against Iran. So in this case, they, the Jewish nation, will occupy the land with strength and vigor as we are now, and once there, we will be immovable. That's what it means, kalavi yakum, like a lion cub, who can stand him up? Now, finally, Bilam's final evil plot in action. So Bilam says, just before he leaves to go back to his home country, I will advise you. So after failing to curse the Jewish people, Bilam advised Balak to entrap the Jewish nation through immorality and idolatry, for which he hoped God would punish them. Acting on the advice of Bilam, even the daughters of the nobles of Moab and Midian were sent into the Israelite camp to seduce the Jewish men. When Zimri brought a Midianite princess into the camp and committed an immoral act, since it was in public, they both deserved the death penalty for desecration of God's name. Moshe Rabbeinu had forgotten the ruling, Kanaim Pogimbo, a zealous one may kill such a perpetrator. So Pinchas, son of Elazar, arose to defend the honor of HaShem and killed Zimri and the princess. For this worthy act, he was gifted the kohuna, the priesthood. And we'll learn a bit more about Pinchas in next week's parasha. And thank you for joining me for this week's parasha shir. Hoping again to see you next week. Shalom.